Go ahead, Dan.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, May 24th, 2021 meeting of the Audit Committee. All of our members are present. We'll have a roll call later, but we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask to go around the room and state your name for the record of the roll call.
Brian Thomas.
Dick Cody. John Gotting.
Dan Hughes.
Ed Lombard.
Jim Steele. Joe Kirkbride.
And we also have present the Honorable Raymond Murphy and Craig
Steinhoff.
Craig Steinhoff, and the young lady is,
I'm Sherry Russ. I'm the new accounting manager for the town.
right, nice having you with us.
Thank you.
First order of business is to approve the minutes of February 8th.
Mr. Chairman, I think the statute of limitations has almost run out on my memory of this meeting. I move the minutes be approved as presented.
Second, Cody.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, those minutes are approved. The public comment, I see none. All right. So I'll call on Craig at this time then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You should have in front of you what I will call a draft audit financial statement, and those of you who have either been through it on this board or others, you win a prize if you notice that there are some things missing in this report. Unfortunately, I'm not ready and prepared to bring you today a full-blown draft audit that includes the Auditors Reports as they typically will be and will be included in the final version. And that's partially due to just the amount of time that's dragged out until now. Obviously, we are September 30th year end, and here we are in the middle of May of the following year, and the audit's not finalized. The last thing that we have to do is get the attorney's letter back to the auditors. Okay, so the town attorney is drafting a letter. He said it should be final today to get to the auditors to be the final check of their box to complete the audit. So that's been kind of dragging a ways. The other reason why this audit has been dragging on, in case you aren't aware, I mean, there has been turnover in the finance department. We had a finance director up until the end of September, Bob Lang, and then we had another finance director in place, Walt Pierce, and Mr. Pierce led the audit until his departure in March of this year, and then I came on as a interim finance director from then on. So due to that is another reason. Once again, although it's an excuse, there's no excuse that's a good excuse. So I'm here to, number one, fall on the sword for the reason why you're looking at a draft that looks like this, but then also talk through a plan. I'm a partner in an audit firm, HBK CPAs and Consultants. I come to you from Sarasota, and I deal a lot with towns, municipalities, and districts, and have definitely run into similar situations. The nuance here is I wanted to schedule this meeting knowing that we would have a draft that looks like this, and if you'll humor me to at least throw out a recommendation, I'd recommend that we review this Obviously, you can ask any questions that you can, knowing that, you know, I've been with the town a couple months. I should be able to answer some of them, but maybe not all of them. And then I will tell you, you know, if it's okay to recommend this audit. What did we say, Mr. Steele? That you are not approving the audit, you are accepting the audit to then move on to town council. So if you can accept the audit in a format that it stands today with a caveat of, you know, the missing pieces are going to look the way that I explained them to you, and then they come in and they look that way, you'll receive an updated version, obviously before it goes to town council. We can go that route. So the missing pieces in here are the auditor's reports. The way that I typically explain it to my audit clients are, that's the only thing in this report that doesn't belong to you as the town, are the auditor's reports. That belongs to the auditors. They can put on that what they deem fit. There's no reason to believe that it's going to be anything other than an unmodified or formally unqualified report, meaning that materially these numbers are correct, that there's nothing that shouldn't be in here that is, and there's nothing that is in here that shouldn't be to a material effect. With that said, besides the attorney letter, the other item that's missing in here is the schedule of findings and question costs. That goes back behind the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And the reason why that is not in here is because the auditors, former finance director Bob Lang and myself have been, lack of a better term, disputing over some of the comments that the auditors had that they wanted to include in here. I have with me the list of audit adjustments that were proposed and posted from the original trial balance that were given to the auditors to the way that they stand in this. And there were 33 adjustments, 33 audit adjustments made. About 27 of those were brought to the auditors from the town. And therefore the auditors felt that a comment was warranted. However, the dispute is the town knew that, you know, adjustments were necessary. We brought them to the auditor's attention. Therefore, we just didn't deem it fair or fit to have certain findings, you know, saying that our books and records were not, you know, materially correct at the time that the auditors were given them. So that is something that I hope and plan to have ironed out. Bob Lang has been tending to some family matters, and therefore getting him and the audit partner and myself all, you know, in the same room, in the same meeting has been kind of difficult. So I hope to have that ironed out this week, if not today while I'm here. So let's see, with all of that said, I don't know if there's any overall questions on this. I know that, you know, looking through a packet, even though some pages are missing, you know, it's 40 some pages, and having I guess a week or less to review it, you know, the highlights are typically, I'm not going to, you know, bring up you know, what these numbers say, although it, you know, due to COVID was another reason why our financials, it's taking longer. Now, I mentioned the 33 audit adjustments, of which you know, 27 were proposed by the town staff, the finance department. That's about half of what it was in the previous year. I don't know if any of you were part of this audit committee, you know, for prior years, but there were I think 50 or almost 60 audit adjustments in the prior financials. So you know, bringing it down significantly, with a majority of those being ones that were proposed by the finance department, I think is a significant improvement. So you know, the audit that you have in front of you, the draft audit that you have in front of you, the missing pieces being the auditor's report, which I am told there's no reason to believe why it's not going to be an unmodified, clean opinion, if you will. And then the only other thing missing in here is the ironing out of some findings. One of those is with our water and stormwater utilities being an enterprise fund, you treat those on the full accrual basis of accounting, and there were some things that we treated on the modified accrual basis, similar to the other departments. So there were some things that, you know, were shown as a revenue line item that got moved to a liability. You know, so some adjustments like that that they're recommending to include in the finding. The second were due to some accounts payable that were discovered as part of the audit, but you know, really minor things. And one reason why we have Ms. Sherry Russ here is because you know, we're getting additional resources in the finance department to help make sure that, you know, this audit doesn't drag out the way that it has historically. We got, you know, good solid working controls, good oversight of the people, significantly less turnover than we had before. So with that said, I wasn't planning on going through page by page on this audit. I think you all should be glad about that. I mean, I can give you some of the highlights of it. As far as it's a little different than a typical for-profit audit financial statement that you may look at. It starts with the MD&A, the management's discussion and analysis, which is our opportunity to talk about how did the town do this year compared with the last fiscal year of September 30th, 2019. You know, certain revenue items were up, you know, just due to the increase in the water fees. Certain other performances were down simply due to COVID, but all in the town had a positive year, and the auditors agreed with that. The rest of the financial statements are very similar to how they've been presented in the past. There's no new accounting or auditing standards that would necessitate additional or changed disclosures than what you've seen in the past or what we had in our 2019 audit.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question?
Sure.
That MD&A was not included in the email that I received. Did anybody get the MD&A?
Should be in the packet that you have in front
Well,
of you.
yeah, we got that this morning, but I didn't get the MD&A. It's not in the email that was submitted to me.
Well, that's my apologies if that wasn't.
So, I mean, there's, and the other thing is, I don't know how we can accept this report without the full reports from the auditors and their findings and some of their recommendations. I don't know how we can accept it with just numbers. So that's my comment.
Well, I don't want to interrupt Dick's train of thought, which I think is a good one. I associate myself with it. But I just have a fundamental question. I got this in the email. I got this morning. One's about twice its size, twice as thick as the other. What's the difference?
I think one of them does have the management
Well, I
discussion
see.
and analysis.
This is the one side, and this is.
One side and two sides.
Maybe that explains it. But the fundamental question, they the same documents. Email this morning.
Email this morning, I believe this morning may have that management discussion and analysis in it that I was talking about.
What page would I find it on?
That's right after the table of
Yeah, it was
contents.
on here. It wasn't on the email.
Table of
So it's a little confusing.
Dan,
Yes.
here's what was emailed. What was emailed missed pages 1 through 9, pages 51 through 60, pages 46 through 49 were missing. The document you have today includes many of those pages. However, today's document misses pages 46 through 49, 52 through 55, 57 through 60. So there are still some missing pages, which Craig explained.
Well, what we got today, Jim, I don't have a manager discussion and analysis. I don't have it.
Well, I mentioned pages that were missing, so, yeah, there are some of those pages
Well,
missing.
that begins on page 3, though. I didn't hear you say page 3 was missing.
I got page 3.
It's
page
in
three is
Pages 3
today's.
through 10 are missing, and I don't have
That's in
pages.
today's.
Hmm?
Page 3 is in today's.
Well, somebody just handed this to me. That's the one I got in the email. I printed this myself. Okay, all right,
It's in there.
all right, good.
We made that switch.
Okay. So the auditors have said, you know, since they did not receive the attorney letter, they're not willing to provide even, you know, stamped as draft, their auditor's report. Because, you know, say that attorney letter came with, you know, for some reason, you know, some type of, you know, liability or obligation that was unknown at the time that they finished their field work. Obviously, their reports would change. I have no reason to believe that it would include anything like that, so that's why the auditors were not ready to include their reports in here, stamped as
How
draft.
long ago did they request for the lawyer's letter?
I was going to ask that
Yeah.
I
question.
mean, we've been sitting here for months and months. Now we're waiting for the lawyer's letter?
When was it requested?
It was requested probably a couple weeks ago. Yeah. But this was also at the same time that we were, you know, making our disputes on the findings.
You're gonna get those resolved?
Yeah, actually, while we were standing here, Robert Lang called my cell phone, so I have reason to believe that he's available to get this wrapped up.
Dan?
Jim?
The audit that was emailed,
Mhm.
the audit that we have today, the updated one, pages 10 through 16, the totals are different.
No,
Yes, they are. If you look at the one that was emailed and the one that was sent, the totals on pages 10 through 16 are different. That's because there was a change in cash and cash equivalents of $14,321. That change was made since we received those in the email.
well, that's news to me.
You sure they're different anyway,
They are different,
by 14,000.
$14,321. Okay, and it is, the difference is all in cash and cash equivalents on the government funds, not the what. A couple other items that we need to think about are on, if you look at page 20, which is the water fund and the stormwater fund.
Mhm.
And you look at liabilities, like the water fund, current liabilities, which notes payable due within 1 year, $918,712.
Mhm.
That's made up of two separate liabilities. The state revolving loan fund is one liability, and then we bought the utility from Lee County is another liability. So there's two liabilities in there. And if you look at the 918,782, the current liability for this year to pay back Lee County is $193,032. So the state revolving loan fund current liability is $725,680. Now, if you look at the long-term liability, which is 22,496,86, and you pull out the remaining part of the note due to Lee County, makes the state revolving loan fund 21,931,039. It doesn't seem to make sense that the difference is that way, because your total liability is larger this year than it was last year because you continue to borrow. And when is the stormwater utility shows no liability this year. But if you look at the cash flow analysis that was done in 2017 based upon revolving loan fund borrowings, there should have been a payment due in the year ending 9/30/19 of at least $393,000, unless the state revolving loan fund has been renegotiated and they changed the due dates. That's, I don't know. Did the state revolving loan fund change due dates?
From last year to this year? No.
No, well, there should have been then a long-term, payable due within 1 year for stormwater, and this shows none.
And what were,
For the stormwater fund, liabilities,
right,
those payable due within 1 year, is 0.
right,
Well, they owed,
okay,
this is a projection done back in 2017. They owed $393,833 for the year ending 9/30/19, and for the year ending 9/30/20, they owed another $706,399. So that's like $1,000,001. This shows 0. That just doesn't make sense.
Notes payable due in 1 year for the water fund is $918,000.
No, stormwater.
Oh, stormwater.
Stormwater.
You know, I read somewhere in this, in the statement that the stormwater, that the revolving fund loan for stormwater doesn't have to begin to be repaid until the last draw on the revolving fund. Of course, that hasn't been paid yet. Is that not true?
That's not true. Once you start borrowing, our first borrowing was in 2017, $6,426,000. You have to start paying that back after a year and a half.
Well, it makes sense to me. I just, maybe I misread this.
no, that's the way,
Right, I read the same thing.
there's the way I read it.
It is the way it read, John? So I read it right.
Yeah, because I read the same thing.
Well, then they must have renegotiated the loan with the state revolving loan fund.
We did.
Yeah, somewhere here, Jim, it says you don't pay it until the last draw on revolving fund. Then you negotiate the payment. That's what it says. I'm just telling you what it says. I'm not-
What page
I'm
is
making
that?
it up.
Yeah, page 36
You got me?
talks about that SRF loan.
Page what?
36, note 7. Principal and interest will be payable commencing upon project completion.
Okay, that's my mistake. That you renegotiate that, and you don't start paying until the loan is fully funded.
That's right.
Okay, my bad.
That's all right. It's a good discussion. I'm glad we got that clear.
That's
Although, Jim, what happens is when we had the initial loan, and then when we had the next phase of work, they didn't open up a new loan, they added it to the same contract, so that extended your date that you have to start repaying. But the payment dates were all part of the new rate calculation. That was done by the rate consultant about 6 or 9 months ago. Contemplating those principal interest payments.
Would you repeat, I didn't follow what you just said.
Yeah.
Oh,
Use the
okay.
microphone, you do it.
Our manager,
Good morning, everybody. So, one of the things that we did was, we talked to the state so that if we had a loan for the first phase, for example, of Pasteur Boulevard, and when that phase closed, we didn't close that loan. We asked the state if they would let us change order that project for phase 2 and phase 3 and so on. The net effect of that is that it kept that loan open longer, therefore it pushed out the date that the first payment was due. So it helped us 2 ways. It helped us by letting us change order the loan and therefore change order the contract. We froze the contract prices at an earlier date, and most of you may know construction prices have been going through the roof the last couple of years. So it helped us that way. It also deferred when the first payment was due to the state. But as all of you know, our interest rates are like at 1 or less. So there's no sort of burning desire from the state to get this money back, along as they're having adequate funds to meet the needs of new demands from new governments, because it's a revolving loan. So for all of those reasons, the state board of governors will look at their overall SRF loan package, push down this flexibility to municipal governments, and we were able to take advantage of it.
Follow-up question. Since you did it for the stormwater utility, why didn't you do it for the water utility? And then they wouldn't have to be paying until the loan was completed.
Well, we asked the state, and every time we ask them if we can do that, because frankly it's easier on us for a variety of reasons I've just mentioned. So we ask them, and sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they think no, and you take balls and strikes as they're called.
So they declined your proposal?
They kept, because the water loan started sooner, they felt like it was getting aged, and they wanted sort of to as you well do. And the question I was asked is why did it take the attorney so long? Frankly, only because of conflicting priorities. The town is involved in a variety of different types of litigation with different people, and those court cases and those dates and those hearings unfortunately take precedent over this. And, but the attorney acknowledged over late last week that he understands that now, because of the length of time, this is now a priority. But as Craig said, there is nothing that we know about that will, from a legal standpoint, that will change what you're looking at today.
Oh, I want to say one other thing.
The partner that the firm sent to do the field work here in person in town interviews me as part of sort of their process. So that person was here, I'm going to say, in late March or early April. And during my interview, of course, after I answered her questions, that I didn't know of any irregularities or anything that they needed to be concerned about, I asked her how we were doing relative to last year, because she was on the team last year as well. And she said, it's fine, we have every single thing we need, everything's great, it's been much better this year than last year. So, and the reason I'm relating this to you is that you understand that when we met with the auditors, when I met with the auditors face to face, late March, early April, they conveyed to me that it was much better than last year, and they had everything they needed. So, I'm somewhat perplexed, as much as you may be, is why we hear you know, at the tail end of May.
Did that conversation take place before or after the 27 adjustments you made?
I don't really, I believe it was, I believe what happened was, and I don't know this to be a fact yet, so this is just sort of my understanding of what transpired, but not necessarily, I can't absolutely guarantee it's 100% factual. The auditors set a window to do these in-person field work, as you all know. And when we set that date with them, it was scheduled out, and we set a date with them, and they were to come and do their field work. We discussed with them that these entries had to be done, and they wanted to wait for us to do them and give them an adjusted balance, or they want to do them. So they wouldn't have to sort of test it twice. It's my understanding they said, well, we'll do it. So it was done, what I believe was in the collaborative thought of trying to expedite getting the audit done, not as a gotcha. But, you know, I'm not going to speak to that.
And Craig, what, Sherry?
Sherry?
Sherry,
Yeah, what's your title?
accounting manager.
County manager, okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Certainly.
Craig, your role, how long is it intended to last? And are we looking for another finance director?
My role is to be determined, I'd say, as far as how long it should last. I've been here probably the latter part of March till now, you know, sporadically. I may come 1 day a week, 2 days a week, and part of it was finding a full-time individual like Sherry, and I don't think you need a full-time finance director. I think somebody can fill the role part-time, but there is definitely a need for leadership. So, you know, Roger and I have had discussions on that, and you know, I think it's still to be determined. I think step one was try to get through, you know, this audit, but as you can see, when we have, you know, 3 individuals and all these moving parts, you know, from the town side, it's difficult. So I came to you today with what I, you know, hoped would be a recommendation. I'll take that off the table and look to you for another or better recommendation. I tried to do this as well because I know that, you know, some of you gentlemen might be, you know, leaving town and going up north and wanted to at least, you know, get something solidified before that happened. And so we might not have that luxury if we, you know, try to move forward without some type of acceptance today. Okay.
Nick, the answer to your question is we're recruiting for a director, okay? And we're recruiting for senior accountants, and we're recruiting for accountants, and we're recruiting for account payable clerk, because the way I really look at this is kind of like it's a NFL team, and you have to look for every opportunity to improve and strengthen your team. And we're to continue to look for people so we have basically, you know, a Super Bowl competitive type team up in our finance department. So while we have some good hardworking people, we're constantly looking for people to upgrade. And if we find the right people, we'll be hiring them. That's what
Are you still, so you're recruiting for a finance director,
yes.
part-time or full-time?
We have it as full-time, but a lot of times we'll have people who will contact us and apply, and for a lot of these jobs, and say, I'm available part-time, can I help you? We had someone do that in one of our other positions, non-finance positions, the other day, saying, I'm getting older, I would like to work, but I don't want to work full-time. You know, I see a full-time position offered in your recreation department. You know, are you thinking about hiring part-time people? So we keep those people on file because sometimes when we want a full-time person, we can't get one, and we get to the point where we need to hire somebody to keep the services being provided, so we'll try to hire 2 good part-time people.
Well, you know, look, I don't wanna tell you or anybody how to do their job. But my own personal observation is a finance director's job in a town such as Fort Myers Beach, or comparable size, is really an important job. It's an important job regardless of whatever, you wouldn't have a finance director. It's not only important from the standpoint of providing technical expertise and supervision, but for the continuity of the staff. They bring people in, and people relate to that finance director, and all of a sudden he's missing 4 days a week, or 5 days a week, or 3 days, or whatever it is.
I agree with you.
My personal opinion is go for the full-time staff rate. We can afford it. That's my.
And that's my position too. And to be honest with you, and with all respect to Craig, the reason I really feel that way is I give a lot of deference to what one of your colleagues, Jim Steele, has to say, because he did the job for a while, and he knows, a lot about the town, perhaps more than all of you, because he actually was the interim manager for several months. So, a lot of times when I would have something, and I might call Jim, or we would bump into each other, and we talk about it a little bit. But I really do feel that we do need a stability that we haven't had, and I think it's important that if we can find a good full-time finance worker, that we have one. And I agree with Ed. That's not something to be cheap about.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Subject to what Jim might have found has changed.
Yeah.
Are all of the adjustments and everything that's now reflected in these financial statements that we have?
That was my understanding. I did not expect cash to change, so I apologize for that. I'm needing to go back and figure out what that $14,000 change was.
Okay. But
Because these both came from the auditors, and I said, hey, the first draft that you sent didn't have that management discussion and analysis, can we get that in? And was sent the second version without the knowledge that I didn't feel I had, needed to go through and check every single number, but obviously I have, 7 individuals that did the checking for me, so thank you.
Greg?
Yeah.
I know that you've worked with auditors in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask you a general question on a scale of 1 to 10. What's your opinion of the relationship and the competency and the capabilities of our current audit?
Am I on the record with this? They are a great firm. I've worked with them on other clients and engagements. I do think that auditors sometimes can be the solution as well as the problem. And so, I think that on a scale of 1 to 10, I was getting very political by not answering the question, but I'll answer it. They're a 6 when it comes to what I've seen with this. Yeah.
And isn't their contract up after this audit?
I believe so. I will tell you, gentlemen, in case you don't know it, finding an audit firm to do the work, finding a finance director, whether part-time or full-time, I'm an employer, and it's not like, good, solid, qualified people are knocking down our doors and falling off of trees and coming. But that's not to say you shouldn't stop looking. So, I do think that, there are 6 this year. That's not to say we can't have a good, stern discussion with them and get them to the 8, 9, or 10 that they should be and can be, frankly. And I think part of it, like I said, I'm the 3rd individual dealing with them on this audit engagement. you know, I'm sure they're getting, a little, you know, leery on, or, you know, frustrated with the transition from our side as well. Because they're having to explain things, you know, the third time to me.
Yeah, and maybe somebody up here can answer, when is the audit usually done? I mean, when is it usually started and finished?
In Fort Myers Beach or anywhere else?
Well, Fort Myers Beach is, yes.
Fort Myers Beach has been as late as last year.
I have last year's statement here, and it was signed April 13th, but that's not to say that when it, you know, when it came to you.
Well, we had to get the state statute requires it to be completed in 6 months, right? It should be completed in 6 months.
March 31st.
Which is March 31. Last year, was it necessary to get an approval from the state because we went beyond the 6-month period? And there was some sort of a waiver of some sort, as I recall.
Correct. Correct.
And it wasn't completed till midsummer. It's been 3 years in a row and there have been extensive delays. So one was either changeover of employees, it was a changeover of the software, it was the changeover of the hardware.
Right.
There was always that it hasn't been timely in the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, the reason I asked, I spent several years in public accounting, and mine was all with manufacturing type firms, and those, they want the report within 60 days. Now, you can't always do that, but.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, the audit firm, they don't want to, you know, have to be in here during their busy season, during January through
Right.
April. And I think a well-run finance department, you know, with the September year end, you can have the September books closed by, you know, October, get the auditors in November and December, and, you know, have a draft by
That
the
was
end
kind
of
of
the
in the
year.
back of my mind.
Right.
That's what the
timing
be.
should be. Correct. Correct. And that's what the team upstairs is working towards for the future, and what, you know, Sherry and I are having discussions about, is making sure that that happens.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you might want to comment on some highlights here. Would you care to do that? I mean, would anybody like to hear that?
I just want to, we just went through it, Roger explained, I remember him explaining to the council at meetings about renegotiating and why it was done, but that to me would be a significant piece of information that should have showed up on something we read, so that we wouldn't have found that out by having a discussion, Roger recalling what what happened during this year when he did this. And those are things I don't see in this report anywhere, and to me, that's material to me. So it leads me that and the $14,000 error, I just don't have confidence in what I'm reading here from that auditor.
Mr. Chairman, you started out by saying you wanted us to accept this audit report. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Without the official reports of the auditors, and findings, and so on. I wonder if there's some way, and what were you gonna do with that?
What was I gonna do with?
If we accepted it.
If you accepted it the way that it stands right now, and I work with the auditors, Mr. Lamb,